welcome in to Listen Up. I'm Joey Chincali here with Alex Coma. Apparently it's Casual Thursday, but no one let me in on the big old joke. Let's get right to the top 5 topics. The NBA playoffs have started. We've seen a lot of chalk so far, but which underdog do you think has the best chance of getting a first-round upset?
Well, considering that there are only 2 series, even tied at 1 right now,
This is true.
we don't really have a lot of options. It really kind of comes down to either Bulls-Nets out in the East, and that's the 4-5 matchup, so it's an upset if the Bulls win. And a little more upset watch is certainly the Nuggets-Warriors, and that's the infinitely more interesting series to me. Mm-hmm. I'll talk about, Bulls-Nets. I don't really want to. I think that the Bulls... Okay, fantastic. Well, I'll keep it brief then. But basically, I feel like they're being kept in it basically solely by Tom Thibodeau's defense. Joakim Noah, I give him so much credit for playing through the plantar fasciitis. Wow, that's a hard word.
It's a tough one.
That's a tough one, but foot injury. How about that? No. And still gets a double-double in Game 2 with 11 points and 10 rebounds.
Pretty crazy.
It was a really impressive performance. I just don't know how often he can make that happen. I think that, obviously if he can and Luol Deng can keep up the scoring, then maybe they got a chance. But Deron Williams has been playing really well right now, and, really since the All-Star break, he's been a whole different player. So it's really hard to deny that. Like I said, I think that Nuggets-Warriors is infinitely more interesting. I think that, the Nuggets, they needed that comeback, that, Andre Miller trickery just to win Game 1 at the last second, and then Golden State comes back and blows them out at home. That was a fun game, but also very much one that the Warriors deserved to win. Even without David Lee, Stephen Curry playing out of his mind, and if they keep getting double-digit scoring from Klay Thompson and Jarrett Jack and Harrison Barnes, this might be a really fun series to watch.
I mean, I think that you hit the nail on the head. Those are the 2 series. Obviously, we kind of cheated by picking
don't like
those
the Bucks?
because it's 1-1 at the moment, and the Bucks will literally not sniff a game. No. You can quote me on that one. But for me, I think I'm actually going to go with the Bulls over the Nets as my one series because of that defense. Really, you spelled it out for me. I think that because they can slow down the series, that makes it infinitely easier for them to win, whereas the Warriors shot over 60% last game, which, as incredibly good at shooting as they are, I don't foresee that happening every single game. So if I'm looking at odds here and I'm saying, will the Bulls keep up their defense or the Warriors keep up their shooting, both of which are their strengths, but still the shooting is where it feels iffier, so I'm going to go with the Bulls having the better chance of an upset. The other thing I like is Joe Johnson's now iffy for the next game, although the only one they really, really need, obviously, is Deron Williams. But for me, I just think that without David Lee, with him getting injured, they have to shoot lights out every game, and if they don't, then I think that the Nuggets are going to be able to end up taking the series. I think it's really interesting, though. I'm a fan of the Warriors. I'd like them to win this series just because they're fun to watch. I mean, it's fun to watch Steph Curry just drain threes all game long. But I think that the Nuggets end up prevailing. I do think that the home court advantage, even though they lost on home court, does come back and help them later in the series.
It certainly could. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, you mentioned their shooting percentage, 65%.
That's crazy.
Just about. I'm pretty sure that's a playoff high, which is just insane to even contemplate. But here's the thing. With this Warriors team, they're a team that can do that. Klay Thompson is very much in the mold of his counterpart, Harrison Barnes. They're very similar players to me, with Klay Thompson being, I think, a little more well-rounded, and we've seen that. He's the one scoring 20 points. And Harrison Barnes, putting him at power forward, really seemed to work for them in that last game. I just don't know that the Nuggets have anyone to take over a game the way that the Warriors do with Steph Curry. Ty Lawson, maybe, I think that there's definitely value in the way that he can dictate the pace of the game. But the Warriors like the pace of the game pretty much where Ty Lawson likes it. So I think that a lot of their advantage is kind of neutralized. It's two very similar teams playing each other. In terms of the Bulls and the Nets, I think personally that Brook Lopez has matured enough as a player, has become enough of an offensive and rebounding threat that whoever is playing center for the Bulls, whether Joakim Noah or not, is going to get worn down by that. And I personally think that that's going to be the difference for them winning. It certainly wouldn't surprise me to see Chicago take that one, but if I had to pick between these two, I would definitely say Brooklyn and Golden State.
Before we move on from this, the last thing I'll say is that it's not necessarily that I feel better about the Bulls over the Warriors. It's that I feel better about the Bulls over Brooklyn. I don't like Brooklyn. And so because of that,
neither do I. That's why it's so hard to say.
That's why I moved towards the Bulls over the Warriors, because the Warriors were playing anyone else, I would maybe feel even better about them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on into the NFL. NFL draft begins in just a few hours. The Chiefs are on the clock with the number 1 pick. What do you do if you're in Kansas City's shoes?
Obviously, what we've seen is it looks like it's going to be Luke Jokel, the offensive tackle out of Texas A&M. it seems like it's pretty much a toss-up between offensive linemen at this point. But maybe I'm crazy here. Maybe I'm in the minority. But if you're the Chiefs and you're saying to yourself, well, you know what, next year we're probably not going to be able to win the division because Peyton Manning's got that locked up. Maybe even the next 2 years you could say locked up easily for the Broncos.
Yep.
But I'm saying to myself, I'm here at number 1, no otherworldly talent in the draft. I can move back and maybe stockpile some picks, get guys developed, and then try to go for that division in 2 to 3 years. Maybe that's what I decide to do because the fact is, if you don't have a guy that you love at number 1, obviously you're still going to get a great player, but I'm just not enamored with taking some offensive linemen that we barely heard of before we started looking at mock drafts. That to me, it's just, I know that the fan base, I'm sure, isn't super excited about that, although they probably brainwashed themselves to say they're excited about it. But I don't know. I think that there's maybe some value to moving down, getting a couple more picks, and continuing to develop talent because certainly we know the Chiefs aren't one offensive lineman away from being a playoff contender. Devil's advocate, just for a second on myself, is that we've seen every year that teams switch all over the place in the NFL. Parity is crazy. You can go from having the top pick to being a really successful team in just a year. So I understand why they would take someone like Joko then.
Well, I think the devil's advocate to that is actually the fact that I think they'd love to trade it. Andy Reid has said, we know who we're taking number 1, but we're listening, people.
Wow.
Here's the problem. No one wants the number 1 pick
agree.
this year.
That could also
That's
be
impossible.
yeah.
I'm sure they'd love to move back. This is a team with a lot of holes. None is particularly glaring, but they're all over the place. They could use the extra picks, but here's the thing. Everyone knows that, and no one's going to give it to them because there's no quarterback that they're going to go up and grab. You'd love for the Raiders to be dumb enough to try and trade up and grab Geno Smith, but Al Davis just isn't around anymore,
And
so they're
it
probably...
seems like they want to move back, too.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone wants to move back in this draft.
Everyone does.
Because here's the thing. It's a very, it's very even. The talent level between number 10 and number 25 isn't that huge. The only problem is they kind of start out down here to begin with. So with this draft, it's very tough. You mentioned, that it seemed like it was Luke Jokel. Really, by all accounts, recent reports by Todd McShay say it's Eric Fisher out of Central Michigan now, with Jokel falling who knows how far, and maybe somebody coming up to get him. I heard San Diego is the one McShay really likes to go up to 2 or 3 to try and grab him because Lord knows they could use a left tackle. I think that if I was the Chiefs, I personally would go for Jokel instead. To me, seeing a guy play in the SEC against the best defensive lines that we have in the country, all while protecting as mobile a guy as Johnny Manziel, that to me says a lot more than what Eric Fisher was able to do over in Central Michigan. I know he had a great Senior Bowl. He had a great pro day. That's not really the type of thing I want to look at. I think it's very much a toss-up, like you said. If I had to pick, it would be Jokel. I'd love to move down, and grab, one of these mid-level players, but I think that they're going to stay where they are, and I think they should take Luke.
I don't have a lot more to say about top 10 offensive linemen. It's just, it goes over my head. It just doesn't appeal to me like last year's draft did. But I'll say this. If any team takes a quarterback in the first round, I think they're crazy. I do. I think they are crazy.
Where's the love for Ryan Nassib?
If you think that he is going to be a franchise quarterback, if you think Geno Smith, if you think Matt Barkley, get out of here. You're reaching, and it's not going to work out. I can promise you that.
How quickly do teams not learn their lesson? How long ago was Christian Ponder and Jake Locker? It was just like
2 years ago,
right? And they're already talking themselves back into these guys who coming into the year they wouldn't have thought of before the 3rd round. I love it. I love the NFL draft.
It's something. The ACC has seemingly solidified the conference with a grant of media rights. Exactly what that means is that the ACC would not only you wouldn't have to only pay an exit fee if you're going to be leaving, but you'd also have to pay the ACC your television revenue until 2026, 2027. So that's kind of far away. I can't really think that far in the future, but that's crazy. Are you a fan of this new grant of media rights thing?
I have mixed emotions about it. I don't mind at all that we can maybe stop shuffling the teams in a conference so much, particularly when it comes to other conferences that might have had their eye on the other good ACC football schools. The Hokies, as much as we'd like them to, don't seem particularly interested in going anywhere. So if they are going to be in the ACC, at least it's not being made weaker by, the Big 12 or the SEC coming along and poaching FSU or Clemson or some of the few schools that give the conference football legitimacy. On the other hand, I want them to go to the SEC so bad, and now it really doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. We've talked about it before, probably on this show as a matter of fact, how we think that without a move to a bigger conference, it's sort of stuck in neutral. And this very much means that I don't see Jim Weaver going against this. The man loves him some money. I don't see it changing anytime soon. So that's.
I have never been super for the VT for SEC. I've always kind of liked the idea of it, but I've always thought it's tougher to change conferences than you think. I know that Virginia Tech did a very good job going from the Big East to the ACC, but if you're a middling team in the SEC, you can stay a middling team for a very long time, and you can even drop down to the lower tier because no one else is waiting for you. And that is not the case here in the ACC. But I'll say this. If they're going to stay, then I do think this is good because essentially what you've done is you've traded Maryland, you've gotten Louisville, and now you said no one's going anywhere, which means you're not losing Florida State, you're not losing Clemson, obviously Louisville staying. You made yourself one of the best, if not the best, basketball conference once Louisville, Syracuse, Pittsburgh come along next year. So for me, I think that in general it's good. I understand that people aren't going to be happy because they had the pipe dream of the SEC, but I just don't think it was happening. And even if it did, I really don't think that it would necessarily, just because you're in the SEC, doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to get every great player. You're going up against incredibly talented teams that you're going to have to recruit against. And there are Ole Misses and Vanderbilts in the SEC, and I'm not saying that Virginia Tech would necessarily immediately go and be those guys, but you start down from the bottom when you shift. So I don't necessarily think this is the worst thing for Virginia Tech, especially since the ACC just got in. Some other pretty talented teams, including Louisville, who does it in basketball and football and brings in a lot of revenue.
Yeah, I think that they'll end up being okay. It's just I'm tired of being the big fish in the small pond. I really think that VT needs to go out. And if they're serious about filling that trophy room over in Meriden, if they're serious about that, you can't do it in the ACC.
See, I think that you got a better chance because you might actually get through the season.
Well, okay, so we've locked down Florida State and Clemson into our conference. Does anyone take us seriously now still? Oh, well, Louisville's locked in now, so they'll definitely think of us.
With the way college football is going to work, I think, is that you're going to have to schedule outside of conference. You're going to have to get stronger conference schedules or out-of-conference schedules. And so because of that, they'll still get the Notre Dame and Louisville and hopefully Florida State and Clemson every once in a while. And then eventually, we got Ohio State and Wisconsin coming up. So those are games you have to win on the national stage. If you played against good SEC schools but you lost to them, you stay middle.
Well, it's a process. I just think that Frank Beamer and Jim Weaver, they're happy with what they have. It's the end of their careers. They didn't want to go out on a limb for it, so they were okay with this happening. For us fans, a little disappointing.
You're probably right.
All right, turning into the NHL. Playoffs are pretty much set these days. By the time we film next week, they'll be underway. Give me two teams from each conference that you think has a legitimate shot at winning the Stanley Cup.
Well, I'm not going to come in here and disrespect your Penguins, so I won't talk about them yet. I'll start out in the West because I think obviously the Blackhawks are a team that can win the Cup. We saw that when they won whatever in a row and didn't lose whatever in a row. Crazy run for them. So we know that they can do it. They have Taves and Kane, both of which are legitimate Hart Trophy candidates. So that one's easy for me. I'm not a huge fan of the Ducks. I was here with the Bruce Boudreau era with the Washington Capitals, and I just don't know yet if it translates. So I don't feel comfortable going there. Vancouver's been very quiet. I still think their whole goalie thing is weird, and I think that if something they lose the first game 5-3, immediately things are going to get crazy there. So I want to shy away from there. And you know me, I've been on the Kings bandwagon pretty much the whole year. They won last year. They've got a Vezina-like goalie and Jonathan Quick. And advanced stats-wise, we see that they're one of the best possession teams in the league. And when you get to the playoffs, you want to keep the puck, keep it away, and make less shots happen. And because of that, I like the Kings. I'll let you talk about the East now.
Well, we're of the same mind when it comes to the West, so it's good. Good. I don't trust Anaheim either. 13-5-5 on the road.
They've been very mediocre lately.
Yeah, I just don't really believe in them. Whereas Jonathan Quick, that's a man that I can believe in.
Yeah.
So yeah. Change we can believe in. Jonathan Quick. On the East, you know that we got to talk about the playoffs. News literally just coming in that Sid Crosby cleared to return to practice. Should put him on schedule to return for the first game of the playoffs. That's rough for everyone else.
I told you that was going to happen, right?
Oh, I knew it was happening. I knew he was coming back. But even better news is that some of their secondary guys are starting to practice again, whether it's James Neal. Paul Martin should be playing tonight against the Devils, get his feet wet again in there. They're still going to be beat up. But I think that the key is when you've got Marc-Andre Fleury, but you also have Thomas Vokoun to, sort of just give him a little backup. Fleury had a rough time last playoffs. We all saw it. They melted down against the Flyers. So I think having a guy who's 13-4 behind your starter is a huge difference for them on top of all the offensive stuff they have. When you talk about the Bruins, they've got the second seed for now, holding on to it by a thread. I think that they'll probably lock it up because I think they're the better team. They're the one team that worries me the most because they can play that Kings game. They've got the goaltending. They've got the defense. They've got a little bit of offense, but they can play playoff hockey. And that truly worries me as a team in the Eastern Conference, more so than, any more offense-heavy team. I'm not saying it. I'm just saying it at the Washington Capitals.
Okay, well, anyways, I will agree with you that I think the Bruins are an interesting team because they're a playoff tough team. They're actually better offensively than a lot of people give them credit for. Sagan has kind of quietly put himself into an MVP-like conversation as well because he's been pretty fantastic this year too. So, yes, obviously conventional wisdom says Penguins and Bruins. Montreal has been very bad lately. You don't really love anyone else in the East.
Carey Price, man.
But the Caps, just for a second, I know that they don't deserve at all to be in this two teams from each conference conversation, but they're fifth best in scoring differential, and that's after starting 2-8-1, which means they got down in scoring differential really badly. So they have been outscoring their opponents greatly lately. I know that everyone says they're in the Southeast, whatever. They've beaten a lot of playoff teams as of late. Granted, a couple times Montreal, which now it seems like they're going down. But hey, can we credit that to the Washington Capitals? To me, goaltending, you got enough. Defense, you got enough. The penalty kill has been fantastic lately, and obviously you've got the hottest player in the NHL right now, which I think that there's something to say. When Ovechkin is playing well, he goes as far, or excuse me, the team goes as far as he can go. So, I think that you could throw them in the conversation. They could say hi from like an island a little bit away, like a canoe ride away. I think that they're around to talk.
Canoe ride away,
yes,
the Washington Capitals.
That's right. Listen up. Copyrighted that. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about basketball just for a minute because this is kind of a boring topic, to be honest. The Cleveland Cavaliers are bringing back Mike Brown. Do you remember Mike Brown? He used to coach the Cleveland Cavaliers. So what do you think about this?
Oh, my God. I hate this
you
so
hate this.
much.
Awesome.
I saw a graphic on SportsCenter. It was the dumbest thing ever. They were trying to compare Mike Brown's career with the Cavs to Byron Scott's. And it's like they didn't appreciate the fact that LeBron James was winning those games, while Kyrie Irving and his collection of misfit toys just couldn't quite hold up to it. That just really made me laugh. Do they remember Mike Brown? Do they remember the same guy that pretty much single-handedly held back LeBron James from winning a title with his dumb offense, neutral team? I just think that you got Kyrie Irving, a great point guard. You want to build a great offense around him. Mike Brown is not the guy to do that. He can teach him defense. I just don't know what they're going with. Good luck, Cleveland.
I'm not saying necessarily that he shouldn't be the coach.
That's
fair
exactly
enough.
what I'm saying.
But how on earth did he earn a 4-year, $20 million contract? That man's going to make $20 million.
Yeah.
That's crazy. For me, we saw when he was with LeBron James that he wasn't great necessarily, which this is a lot to do with NBA coaching. It's partially about the X's and O's, and a lot of it is how you foster stars and how you take care of them. We saw he didn't do a good job with King James, LeBron, and now you've got Kyrie, who really wasn't that easy on Byron Scott either. We saw them kind of flaring in the middle of the year as well. So if we think that Mike Brown's going to be able to come in and control Kyrie Irving, I'm not sold on that. For everyone that's saying LeBron James is going to come back to Cleveland, which I do think is kind of a fun pipe dream,
Sure.
but I think this kind of kills it because I don't at all see why he would want to go back and play for Mike Brown. So I think this is stupid.
I think it's so hilarious because here's the thing. It was very public. Kyrie Irving had a little bit of a fight with Byron Scott. Mm-hmm. But when he was fired, he started crying. It got teared up because even though they had a fight, he still had a relationship with the guy. Why would you screw that up for Mike Brown?
Mike Brown.
When it was Phil Jackson, all right, yeah, let's for him. But
true.
A little less so for Mike Brown. All right, we're tired of that. We're moving on to Pick'em. Joey, making a valiant effort with 4-2.
Don't call it a comeback.
Yeah, well, the best he can do is tie. So we'll see what happens this week. We're going to lean things off. The Brooklyn Nets, Chicago Bulls, Game 3. We talked about it.
All right, the Bulls are at home in Game 3. I like them. I'm not saying they're going to win this series necessarily, but I do really, really like them in Game 3. This is one of the games that I feel really good about.
Yeah, I like the Bulls as a concept, and I dislike the Nets. The only problem is, I get that they're at home, but in an evenly matched series like this, I don't think they can hold down Deron Williams forever. I think he picks a game to really take over. Let's say this is it. Give me the Nets.
What a philosophical answer. All right, Clippers at Grizzlies for Game 3.
Well, I think there's no doubt that the Clippers are the better team. I think we can all agree they are the best team in this series. Chris Paul is the best player in this series. And as good as Memphis is defensively, LA is just that much better offensively. I think that Memphis can win a game just, to sort of surprise people, especially now that they're coming home. I think this might be it. Maybe Mike Conley brings the offense. Tony Allen brings the defense. Grizz.
I think that before this series started, I said to myself, wow, this is going to be such an exciting series.
Yeah.
Just like last year, one of the best first-round series we're going to get. But then I'm watching, and I just don't know where the perimeter scoring comes from for Memphis. I just don't see it. When I watched the third and fourth quarters of the last two, or excuse me, the first game, I didn't catch the second half of the second game, but the first game I'm watching, I'm saying, how on earth is Memphis going to score in this series? I just don't see it. If Mike Conley doesn't score, they don't score, and Mike Conley's not going to put up 30 points. He's going to put up maybe 20 and dish the ball as well. So I don't know. I think it's crazy to think that the Clippers are going to go up 3-0 when they're not that much better than the Grizzlies, but just from the way the series has gone so far, I'm going to have to go with the Clips.
All right, more NBA. We talked about it again. Denver Nuggets going to the Golden State Warriors for Game 3.
I'm really torn on this. I'm pretty much going to reiterate the points I made back in the first topic. I don't think the Warriors can shoot 60% every game, and I think without David Lee, it changes up the offense completely. So because of that, I'm going to go with the Nuggets, even though I don't love that pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think Golden State's being the best team in both these games.
They have, Alex.
I think, and now they're coming home, so I don't know what more you could want. Give me the Warriors, making it easy on me.
New York at Boston for Game 3.
I hate the Knicks so much. I like the Celtics a lot, but without Rajon Rondo, it's just ugly out there offensively. Did you see the second half of Game 2? It was like watching a kindergarten team out there. When you compare that to the Knicks, who are a very efficient team offensively, I will say that the Knicks take this one. That's not to say that the Celtics won't win one, maybe Game 4, maybe Game 5, not Game 3.
Well, they can't win Game 5 if they won't win Game 4 or 3. So I'm going to go with this one. Just that's the one they're going to win. If it's going to happen, probably New York wins this 4-1, and I hope that Game 3 is the one that the Celtics steal. I'm just talking about how Memphis can't score, and the Celtics put up the two worst.
You just picked a team even worse than them in scoring. All over the place tonight. Moving over into baseball, the Atlanta Braves have got Mike Minor against the Detroit Tigers and Doug Fister Sunday Night Baseball.
How do you go against the Braves right now? It's really tough, but I'm going to do it because I don't like the Barbs. So let's go with Fister.
That's terrible. The Tigers have been a little shaky this year, only 10-9 to start things off. I've never liked Doug Fister as a pitcher that much. The strikeout numbers make me a little queasy against a good lineup like the Braves. Atlanta for this one.
All right, next up is Quick Hits. This is Quick Hits. The commemorative plaque that honors Barry Bonds as the home run king has been stolen from AT&T Park. What do you think of that?
They were just doing what we were all thinking.
Yeah, well, seeing as he was cheating, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Liverpool's Luis Suarez was giving a 10-game ban after he bit an opponent during a soccer match this weekend. Can you imagine if LeBron James did the same thing?
The world would literally explode.
That's exactly what I wrote.
No!
It would also be the most awesome thing ever.
We both wrote that.
Tells you that the world actually would explode.
The Bobcats fired Mike Dunlap after just one season. At the top of the helm, is it time for Michael Jordan to become a player, coach, owner?
1,000,000% yes. I want to see Mike out there yelling at Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, set me a pick, out there at like 52. I'm all in.
This is how crazy it would be. The world would explode a second time. That's mind-boggling.
All right, Meta World Peace supports the great tweeter Kobe, was vowed not to tweet during Game 2 of their series. World Peace said that Kobe was absolutely not a distraction, that he's the distraction. He's much more of a distraction than Kobe. Do you agree?
Yeah, no. World Peace is a funny guy. Kobe is conniving. He knows what he's doing with all this. He does. You know he does.
I think they can share the lead for biggest distraction, although at least if Kobe was sitting in the stands for Game 2, the way that Meta World Peace might have been, maybe he doesn't, go up into them the same way. So.
Oh, God. All right, college football playoff, will be the name for the college football playoff. People seem very upset about this, though. What do you think?
They just could have called it not the BCS, and I would have been happy, so I don't mind.
I think they should call it the Free Labor Championship Series. That's just my opinion. Thanks for watching us this week.